Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the show. I'd just like to take a moment to tell you about a book that I've written. It's a memoir called Fool Me Twice, and it's a story about my life with a focus on my journey internet dating, where I was scammed and injured in the process. It's an educational book that will help many other people not to get caught in the same trap that I was. I'd like to also take this opportunity to play my book promo for you. Here it is.
From life on a farm in rural Australia, where wide open spaces made a young woman yearn to know what was beyond her country town. She moved to the city, became a mother, and found her dream career, which took her across the world. But still, something's missing. In her search for love, she traveled far, trusted deeply. She wanted so badly to find someone that she almost lost herself in the process, and learned some hard lessons along the way. Fool Me Twice, a new memoir by Jules Hannaford. Available August 20th on Amazon.
Today I'm here with Chris Geary. Hi Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi Jules, nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in to see me. Now, I want you to tell me a little bit about BSD Code and Design Academy, and what do you do there?
Sure. So we're a technology education organization. We have a software platform and we provide content and training to teachers and instructors of technology all over the world.
Oh, fantastic. And then how did you get involved with bringing refugees in on the program?
One of the things we've always strived to be an organization that looks at a business bottom line, but also an impact bottom line. The mission of our organization is to take technology education and make it universally accessible. We always look at communities that we can create a genuine impact through. And for us, when we researched the refugee community, we said, look, this is a place where there's people who are isolated from day-to-day life. They come to Hong Kong and in other parts of the world too, but I'll talk to the Hong Kong context.
Sure.
They're isolated from the day-to-day life, so the world kind of gets away from them. And technology skills keep you in touch with the world around you. And in the end, every refugee will go somewhere. They'll resettle and they'll find a home that can be a home forever. And technology skills are something that is transferable anywhere in the world where they end up. And so we said, look, with what we do and with what they need, it's very connected. Let's go ahead. And that became the first initiative for community impact that we set up. We set it up actually just 3 months after we started the company.
How long's it been running for?
We've been running RefuGeek now for 5 years.
It's called RefuGeek. Tell me a bit more about the name and how that came about.
A couple of things really. Geek has become quite a trendy word over the years. So a title for a program, it's good to have it catchy. It's obviously a play on refugee. Another thing for me symbolizes is we're taking refugee, we're just making a tiny little change. Just one letter.
Yeah, it is only one letter,
just one little letter to quite a long word. And at the end of that, what you end up with is maybe a complete change of perception, maybe a complete change of direction, or maybe a change in someone's life. And so that is also meaningful.
When you're talking about a change in direction or a change in people's life, are you talking about the fact that you are upskilling the refugees, you're giving them all of these opportunities to make a change in their life and giving them some direction and opportunity to live a full and happy life when they do resettle and they can actually work?
Yeah, exactly. And there's this perception internationally, I would say, and we hear a lot about people seeing refugees as a threat. But at the same time, when I look around the world, I see businesses and communities saying that they're lacking in technology skills and technology talent. So if you take a refugee and you give them technology skills, actually they can become this great opportunity. And there's no reason why we should see them as a threat. We should see them as a talent opportunity. And, refugees, they're not here because of their own fault. Half the time, or most of the time, they don't want to be here.
Yeah.
They'd rather be at home. But unfortunately, circumstances have contrived that it's not possible for them.
What sort of circumstances are you aware of, the reasons that refugees are in Hong Kong?
Refugees that we've known ourselves. There are refugees that have fled from persecution, from slavery, from wars, from natural disasters, from environmental crises. There are all sorts of stories. There are people who've been threatened by criminals. One of the young guys we started off with, a number of his family members had been killed. And he was a teenager and he left his home and he came to Hong Kong. He's not here to threaten anyone.
No, it's tough. And it must be a tough life, especially for a young person, but for any refugee. And when they get here, my understanding is that they can't work. They don't get any sort of social benefits or social security. And they're really relying completely on charities. Is that right? Or do they get a small amount of funding from the government?
I wouldn't necessarily call it funding. They get a small amount of economic support.
Right, like a stipend.
Exactly. But also when refugees get money for food, that's food tokens. If you have a food token, you can use it at one of the supermarkets, maybe Park and Shop. But everyone knows in Hong Kong, the best place to shop is in the market. You can't use a food token in the market. So they're getting these tiny little food tokens, but yet they're subject to huge increases in consumer price indexes. The support that's given to them, it really doesn't allow them really to live a good life. And we don't allow them to make money. It's really not creating a fair playing field for them. And it's one thing to just live a life, but to ask someone to live a life without dignity is not fair.
Absolutely. I can't imagine what it must be like. How did you initially get RefuGeek off the ground and meet refugees and get them involved in the program?
I'd been familiar with the refugee community for a couple of years before we started BSD because I'd run an art and design program with my wife that benefited refugees. So we used to run it monthly. And so we'd met refugees through a charity called Christian Action. And so then after we started BSD, we said, well, look, this technology program is very meaningful. Now, you only have, as a small business, as a small kind of business guy, we only had so many resources and so much time. And so we said, let's really dedicate that to the RefuGeek program. And so we went away from the art program to the RefuGeek program. And we said to Christian Action, look, are there people who would be interested in this? And initially, there was one guy that we started with. And, we said, let's just get started. And let's work with this guy. His name is Seva. And let's work with him in exactly the same way we work with other adults. And that's what happened. And then he worked with us for about 8 weeks. Nikki, who co-founded BSD, worked directly with Seva, taught him, everything he could in that time. And Seva was in our office environment, working on learning himself, helping with some project, and all focused on him learning. Then one day he got a call. And this is the way for a lot of refugees. And this is also quite a jarring thing because Seva came to Hong Kong when he was in his teens. And he'd been here, to my understanding, about 8 years. He was there 22. And then he got a call and said, young man, you're going to the United States.
Who was moving him to the United States?
UNHCR.
Oh, right. Okay.
And you will be going in 2 days.
Oh, my gosh. How did he respond to that?
So, he
probably. Yeah.
His life of 8 years and off he went.
Did that mean he was going to be able to settle in the US and actually use the skills that he got from you and get a job?
Exactly.
How did that go?
Let's think about the probability of success.
Yes, you don't know anybody, you're completely foreign.
And if I then tell you he landed in Oakland, California, that's a challenging place to land. Hong Kong, we enjoy a lot of safety and a lot of comforts.
Yes, we do.
Sense of personal security. Oakland doesn't enjoy everything like that for its citizens, although I understand it's improving nowadays. But when Seva got there, he had to make his own way. And it started pretty rough for him.
I can imagine, because can't get a house if you haven't got a job. You can't get a job if you haven't got an address. All of that sort of thing. It's very difficult, isn't it?
He gets his social security. He gets his permission to work. And then it's like, okay, good luck, buddy. Off you go.
See you later.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. How did he get on, do you know?
Yeah, he kept in contact with us and he got some support from Nikki and he picked up a freelancing contract not long after, within just about 6 weeks, I think, of him landing in the United States.
Doing IT work?
Yes, doing tech work. Things like WordPress websites. You know, one of the things we focus on with RefuGeek initially is giving people the fundamental skills to be a freelancer, you know, because that's where you stand on your own 2 feet. And the careers of the future are creative careers.
Yes.
And in creative careers, you progress through your reputation, you progress through what you do. And that actually makes it a very level playing field, but it also means you've got to be able to start somewhere. And so fortunately, he had the skills to start somewhere. I'm happy to say that in a few months, he had a brand new MacBook Pro. He ended up moving up to Michigan, and he now works as a middleware engineer in Seattle. He has his own place. He drives a sports car.
That's brilliant.
He's been hugely successful. And there was an article about it in the SCMP a couple of years ago. You can still find it online.
I saw it when I was researching you. Yeah, so that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a great circumstance. And we put a lot of effort in with Seva, but he's done this himself.
Yes, you can give them all the tools, but then they've got to get themselves through the job interviews and be committed and organised and work hard and all of that. Exactly. And you can't make that happen.
Exactly.
So you're sort of upskilling them, but then they've got to get over the line themselves.
And one thing with us, so one of the other things we've learned over the years is we don't have control of the timescale. Yeah, refugees can be here for any amount of time. And like we learned with Seva,
it can go in a flash.
It can go in a flash, exactly. So one of the things we learned is we've had subsequent and we have regular cohorts of RefuGeeks who are learning. And we treat the cohorts like an MBA cohort. You know, when you're with us and you're an asylum seeker or a refugee, you are a student of technology education. No different to someone studying an MBA or a degree or anything like that. You know, you are learning a professional and transferable skill.
What does that do for their self-esteem and their sense of pride?
I think it just allows people to focus on something that's meaningful and they're preparing something for their future. Hopefully it gives people hope as much as anything.
And you can't have resilience without hope.
Exactly. And hope drives a lot of it. And if you trust that in the future, things will be okay. You can see a light at the end of a tunnel, and it can be a really long tunnel for these guys. However, what we've learned as well is that with the RefuGeek program, because of time is actually on our side, sadly, time is on our side. What we're also able to do is to make the program longer. So now RefuGeek is a 1-year program. We help the RefuGeeks to connect with networking events. We're supported very generously by Garage Society for this. And they have some great programs. They're really supportive of us as an organization. And we also provide every RefuGeek with their own computer so they can study in their own time. And organizations like West Island School, like you guys have been amazing, donating laptops to us. Also Quarry Bay School.
That's great.
That's been fantastic.
I'm sure there's other organizations out there in Hong Kong who can donate old laptops to this program. And at the end of the podcast, we'll give your details so people can get in touch.
Exactly. And then another area we have, because it's a 1-year program, we actually said, you know what, it could be even more than that. We're even looking at a second evolution for RefuGeek right now, which I'm really excited about, because we've got the first year cohort that a RefuGeek will go through is learning the fundamental skills of a freelancer.
In website design, Photoshop.
Exactly. Web development, WordPress development, the basics of computer operations, which talks to servers, things like registering domains, the difference between a Windows server and a Linux server, graphic design, user experience. And then we also teach RefuGeeks how to use online platforms like Mechanical Turks, which is an Amazon platform for doing basic tasks, like how to find work online with Upwork. And with this, they get to the point where they can stand on their own 2 feet and they could freelance online and make money. Now, the next phase for us is now we've been also engaging with multinational corporations. Now, something that I feel is that the process at the moment to resettle a refugee or a RefuGeek is it's driven by governments. And governments are designed and organized to work with populations. They look at problems involving millions of people, but it's pretty tough for a government to do something with just one. To make a good user experience for one person for a government kind of goes against what a government's set up to do. But if you talk to any chief executive of any market industry in the world, and they tell you that people are not their top priority, then they're probably not going to be a chief executive for much longer. So companies are engineered to look after human beings and the well-being of humans.
And I think Hong Kong companies are very good at that, aren't they? They're really very generous and aware of giving back to the community, it seems.
Exactly. They spend a lot of time on that. But the thing is, for us, it's what about if corporations who are in Hong Kong know, hey, look, this talent that is being created here, and I could use that in my home country. If I'm an Australian corporate, I could use that in Australia. I'm Canadian corporate. I could use that in Canada. And then as a corporate, what I could do is I could say, hey, do you know what? These are highly skilled people. So I'm going to apply for work permits for highly skilled people for a talent shortage.
Is there a talent shortage?
Globally, there are simple statistics. I mean, there's always more to a statistic than
meets the eye.
Yeah, exactly. Than meets the eye. However, quite a widely accepted statistic is 2% of graduates are in computer science. Yet 22% of employment growth is in computer-related needs.
That's very interesting.
There's only a tiny supply of the talent needs in the areas of computing and in the areas of computer science. This is minuscule.
Do you have companies actually hiring refugees in Hong Kong and getting them work visas?
So companies...
RefuGeeks.
RefuGeeks. So companies in Hong Kong, they're not actually able to hire RefuGeeks in Hong Kong. However, if I look at, say, a bank, an American bank or an Australian bank, and we have companies that we're working with and we're developing programs with them. So we're looking at our first actual program that will launch next year will be a fintech program. So the RefuGeeks who've been through RefuGeek Part 2 is going to be financial technology. And so what we're looking at now is we're talking with banks. Now, we can work with the banks to develop a curriculum, which we're doing. The RefuGeeks are going to learn here. And then maybe
they can be
companies can talk to their governments where their headquarters are and say, hey, look, we've got these positions. We've not been able to fill them. Our office in Hong Kong has been part of this program, training people up. We would like to offer these human beings who are highly skilled the opportunity to get a visa and work in our country.
Brilliant. Have you seen this happen yet?
Not yet. This is our new initiative.
Oh, okay,
I don't know anyone else in the world, but...
Nobody else in the world is doing something like this for refugees.
I don't know, but I don't think so. And certainly not, looking at this connection between ability. How can businesses help refugees to move around the world rather than just relying on governments? How can business step up to the plate? And how is it a way that also benefits business?
Yeah, well, obviously, given the statistics that you gave me, it would absolutely benefit them. So they'd be mad to not get on board.
The beautiful thing is there's an organization in Switzerland called the World Economic Forum. And I've been participating with that organization for a number of years. And the founder of the World Economic Forum, Professor Schwab, came up with a theory called multi-stakeholder. And that says that the best partnerships can be formed when governments, businesses, and civic society work in harmony together. Now, our program, RefuGeek, we're so small. We're such small potatoes. Hong Kong lingo. We are such small potatoes that we're probably civic society, I would suggest. And then business is companies. But that is not companies just paying. This is companies being the agents of moving. And then in this situation, I'm not asking governments to focus on the individual. I'm asking governments to do what they already do in the normal course of their business, is simply to consider a professional visa application. And that, to me, seems a better triangle of cooperation than for us to ask the governments to focus on moving humans around, which they don't do really well, and then not having an opportunity for business at the other end.
Exactly. So that does seem like a really good format, and hopefully you can get that off the ground.
Exactly.
Refugees want to be involved in your program. Is there an application process they've got to go through? Can anybody join? Do you have a limited amount of places on your program? How does it work?
We limit every cohort to a maximum of 10 people. And what we have is we have a 3-step process where refugees and asylum seekers can join a cohort. So there's an initial expression of interest, and anyone who expresses the interest attend 2 classes. We actually provide the funding for transportation to attend. So there's no cost to the refugees or the asylum seekers to attend the introductory program, and it's 2-hour classes. And what that means is refugees can see, 1, is it manageable for me to get to the class? And 2, is it something I'm basically interested in? So even if someone has no knowledge or understanding of technology, they can have a look. That's class 1 and 2.
And how many people might you get at that class?
Typically, we get about 30 plus people who will come to each of those.
Cool.
The second phase is called RefuCoder. So that's the second phase of our process, and that's 3 classes. And what it does is it gives the refugees who've been through the introduction the opportunity to actually try hands-on some of the things that they will learn in RefuGeek and say, hey, look, do you know how to turn on a computer? Can you get your head around the concept of the internet if you've never come across it before? And we get people who are experts and we get people who've never seen it before.
Yes, I was going to say you get a vast range, wouldn't you? So you would really have to diversify your curriculum, differentiate your curriculum.
Exactly. It would be hugely differentiated, and it would also mean that we could get a very unbalanced cohort of RefuGeeks. And so what we look to do with the second program is some people will go through. So typically from the 30 that start off, we normally end up with maybe 20 people in RefuCoder. From there, we go down to 10 people with RefuGeek. And normally what we find is some people say, look, I need a little bit more understanding. They understand the full commitment and the amount of stuff that needs to be learned. Some people say, look, could I have some other materials to look at, come back another time, or I'm ready to go. I'd like to be in the cohort. And so we just try and make it so people who get to the cohort can be as successful as possible.
Which is great. It's good that you've got that 3-step plan, because then you can sort of weed out the people who just aren't quite right for it, or if it's not really in their area of interest.
And if someone steps out at the RefuCoder phase or if the introductory phase, that never would preclude anybody from coming back at another time and saying, now's a much better time for me to do this.
Oh, that's cool. So there's no sort of black mark against their name.
We don't black mark people.
That's cool.
You never know
what's going on in their lives.
What someone's come through. There could be somebody in our classroom who's got post-traumatic stress disorder. And it might be very uncomfortable for them to simply be in a classroom environment. And therefore, why not take a step back and then come and try again?
And do you find that you have to help people with social or emotional issues as well as the program that you're running? Does that come up?
Yeah, so our instructors are not qualified and haven't been trained. It's something we're looking at doing, but we haven't yet had training in actually actively managing conditions with people or anything like that. However, Sam, who runs our program, Sam Elney, he's a refugee himself, and he's very familiar with that, with the community. He also knows all of the resources that are available to the refugee community. And so where people are having challenges, he can point them in the directions of the professionals that are able to offer the right type of support.
That's perfect. And isn't it great that he's there and able to do that? And I'm sure even just being able to make that connection with somebody who understands what the person is going through, that's probably helpful.
Exactly. And Sam's incredible. Sam came to Hong Kong. He's from Somalia. He's a refugee and he's so smart. This guy, he learned English. He's learned tech. If you look at the broader economy, he's a lot more valuable than me.
How did he end up working with you? How did that come about?
I got introduced to Sam by Natalie Chan and Chantal Wong, who are 2 friends. And Sam and I connected at BSD. He attended an event there. We had a chat and I invited him to learn with BSD. But Sam wanted to do more than that. He wanted to be there every day. And so that became perfect. Then we actually worked with a lawyer and got Sam permission to work in Hong Kong.
Isn't that great? Yeah. How brilliant.
He was the second refugee in the history of Hong Kong to get permission to work.
Unreal. That's amazing.
That shows the power of these digital skills. That shows the power of technology skills. Yeah. That's the second person in history since 1992.
Wow. Who was the first?
There's a gentleman who works for Christian Action and he got the first one.
Wow. So you're setting a precedent. There could be possibilities for more refugees to get a work permit in Hong Kong.
There could be, but don't forget that's still a permission to work rather than a work permit.
Oh, okay.
The difference is it's not residency, but it means that refugees can legally permitted to work in circumstances like this technology skills. But eventually, of course, Sam will go somewhere else. Sam will resettle somewhere else and I'll be devastated.
I know. Are you also involved with Refugee Union?
So we don't work with Refugee Union at the moment, but we've focused all of the work we do with Christian Action. That's because we've had a long-term relationship with them. It's for us, with the limited resources we've got, we really need to focus on managing one partnership and relationship with a greater amount of depth. Another organization that Sam collaborates with a lot is called Learning Together. And actually, Chantal, who introduced me with Sam, that's an organization that she runs. And that's about English language learning. So we also have a number of refugees who learn with Learning Together. And then they might also apply to RefuGeek.
Oh, wow, cool. And there's another group, Vision First, as well in Hong Kong, who work with refugees as well, isn't there?
Yes, exactly. And one of the things is there are a number of organizations now seeking to work with refugees. And it's great because people are becoming a lot more cognizant of the genuine challenges affecting refugees in the community, and there is a lot more support available for them. And I would say that's giving the community at large a greater opportunity to have someone or in proximity to them that they can learn about refugees more. But also there are more and more opportunities coming up to help the community in a meaningful way.
We just had 2 ladies from Refugee Union come in to do a community project with our students.
Oh, awesome.
And they did a cooking and storytelling project. And it was just amazing. And the students got so much out of it. And one of the women was from Uganda. And she was a teacher in Uganda. And it was so evident to me that she was a teacher, just in the way that she was able to hold the class's attention and give them the instructions and answer their questions. And she was really amazing. And I just felt, there's a real skill and talent that can't be utilized in Hong Kong because she's a refugee. And that is really incredibly sad.
Yeah, it's so sad to think. And I mean, that's killing, because I was driving along a highway in the UK in February. I was driving into Norfolk in the East Anglia. There are billboards on highways in the United Kingdom asking people, please train as teachers. Please skill as a teacher, because in the UK, they have a critical shortage.
Yeah, I know. In many countries, they do have a critical shortage. And here we've got someone who's qualified, experienced, is really good at it, and she can't do the job.
Just because of the word refugee. When actually, this lady is a talented human being.
So talented. You mentioned earlier that people fear refugees or they have a negative attitude towards them. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of the way they're portrayed in the media?
I think it's partly media portrayal. I think as well, a lot of people don't take the time to research topics. And I think a lot of people get their news through the channels that they choose. And often, if you don't understand refugees, perhaps the community within which you exist, call it your online echo chamber.
I like that.
Perhaps your echo chamber of your life also doesn't understand refugees, but perhaps you hear bad stuff about them. And perhaps, therefore, your views are formed from that. Years ago, it used to be that there were kind of 4 channels and 3 newspapers. Now, there are arguments for or against that, but you had this kind of accessible, broad spectrum of views on the world. And nowadays, whilst all of that information is hugely accessible to all of us, we also define the channel through which we receive it and what we get through that channel.
And that can be very myopic, can't it?
And I think it often is very myopic. And I think that this fear of refugees and the misconceptions, and there's always been that adage that one person behaving badly can ruin it for the rest of us.
And we see that in many different cultures.
Exactly.
And we see fear of many different subcultures as well. Not just refugees.
Amongst different races, amongst different religions, and no different with refugees as well. And I think that it's getting worse. I don't think that situation is getting better.
There was an image of a Syrian child on a beach that had died, a refugee, that was in the paper some years ago. And that seemed to have a massive impact, and it went viral. And do you know whether that had any sort of impact on the way that people view refugees? Do you think there was more empathy created, and was it helpful?
I fear that there would have been short-term empathy created. A picture says 1,000 words, and anything involving children has an extremely powerful effect on human beings in general. However, we also have a very short memory, and there's huge amounts of information that is being pushed towards us. And I think that, did it have an effect? Yes. Did it make people go into the topic and read and research a balanced view about all of the facts? Sadly, probably not. And I still see organizations who say, well, I'd like to help, but I don't know how to help, and I don't understand how the issue is structured. And the thing is, when you Google a lot of issues, I was actually Googling something the other day about education statistics, trying to find out how many children are educated in the developing world. The funny thing was, I could only really find statistics online when I Googled that. about how many children are not educated.
Yeah, exactly. And there's 66 million girls in the world who are not being educated. And that's appalling.
But I wasn't also able to find a statistic about who is.
Isn't that interesting?
I was only able to find about who is not. And that's interesting to me because I was digging, I was going 3 pages deep and I couldn't find a statistic for that.
Wow, yes, that's very interesting, isn't it? How news is packaged and how it's presented to us.
And it's the way, you sometimes, it's only searchable to find a particular angle because people thrive on an angle.
Very good. I like that a lot. Going back to what organizations and the individual can do to help change perceptions or literally help refugees, what do you suggest? First of all, tell me about organizations.
Sure. So with organizations, let me start with businesses. Refugees can learn from your business environment. Refugees are allowed to learn in Hong Kong. You can invite refugees to come and learn about accounting, to come and learn about digital marketing in your organization. And in return, you will get work done as part of that learning and educative process. So as a business, you can step up like that. You just need to make it a priority.
Okay, so I have a business and I'm listening to this podcast and I think, oh, that's a very good idea. I'm going to do that and give back to the community. How do I find these refugees to invite them in?
Exactly. And you could speak to Christian Action. You could reach out to us and we're happy to connect you to NGOs in the refugee space. You can get proper information and connect to people who are professionals in the space. And equally, if you're in a business and you're listening to this and you want to know, well, how would I help a refugee to learn about digital marketing? Speak to us. The curriculum and the content we have at RefuGeek is available to anyone that would like us to share it with them. Anyone in the world.
That's brilliant. And that's a part of giving back as well, isn't it? We did a thing here at school called Ally Week, where we looked at acceptance of LGBTQ plus people, but more so it was about human rights and it was about positive language and treating everybody with kindness and respect. And I've shared that program with people all over the place, and because I would like to see that grow. I would like to see that done in more schools. And I can see you would love to have your program picked up by other countries and other places so that more people benefit.
Exactly. But one thing I would say is for people, when you're looking at volunteering, consider the commitment and make it as a commitment.
Yeah, it has to have some sort of deep impact. It can't be tokenistic.
Exactly. And if you're one of the other areas, we are always looking for volunteers for our program. People who have relevant skills and are willing to come in and teach for us.
That's a great idea.
Or volunteer their expertise. But one of the things we really need people to kind of commit to when they come is to say, look, okay, I accept I'm going to come for the next 6 weeks and it's going to be every Thursday or whatever it is. And I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to swear by that. That's going to be bulletproof. That's so important because we're going to be there. The RefuGeeks are going to be there. And you've got to be there.
Everyone else is committed to the program, so you need to be as well. So that's one way the individual can help refugees. Have you got any other suggestions of how just general people in the community can help make a difference?
Yeah, so other areas is if you have computer equipment or technology equipment, then we take donations of all computers. We can format computers ourselves or you can give them to us formatted. That is hugely helpful because we give computers to all the RefuGeeks and we want to make sure that they have good quality machines to work with. So that is hugely valuable. But nothing also supports a cause like the voice of the community. And so for us, if you're saying, well, I don't have a computer, I either want to give or I'm able to give. I'm a company and I don't feel like I can fit someone to learn in my organization. That's all okay. But tell people about, hey, I heard about this program called RefuGeek.
And I heard about this podcast called Hong Kong Confidential.
Exactly.
With the podcast RefuGeeks, because that's what we'll call it.
I heard about RefuGeek on Hong Kong Confidential.
Yeah, and now I want to make a difference.
Exactly. And now I want to make a difference.
Can you make a difference? Yeah.
I'm making a difference by sharing this and saying, hey, who wants to step up to the plate? And this is hugely valuable for us. We underwrite our program ourselves. We've just had a commitment from Lush Cosmetics.
They're a great company, aren't they, for
absolutely
giving
fantastic.
back to the community. They're one of the biggest in Hong Kong for making a difference.
Massively. And the other thing was actually I felt that their process had a huge amount of empathy in it because a lot of time when people are going to support you, they say, okay, we're interested to support you. And then they give you something that will take you 2 years to fill out. It's kind of like there's a 10,000 word essay attached to that. For people who are trying to run programs and do that, we're trying to make the most of our time as well. And Lush were amazing. It was such a simple process. So their whole process and approach had a lot of empathy, really simple, really efficient on communicating with us. It was fantastic.
That's brilliant. And are they stepping up in the sense of funding or equipment, or in what way?
So Lush are giving us funding.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So,
They're so good,
that's
aren't
fantastic.
they? They're great.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you find the most rewarding about the work that you do with the RefuGeeks?
For me, everything that I do, I see education as an equalizer. I was really lucky in my life. I got this incredible private education, university education. It was all there for me. I wanted for nothing. And that's game changing. But education, it's such an opportunity for equality and for people to have an equal opportunity. And I feel that technology education is even more so. But the thing is, when I look at some situations, if you have a scenario looking forward, if you have a scenario where people don't have access to technology and other people do in terms of technology education and the mindset that goes with it, the danger is technology could drive a wedge in society. But if everyone has the opportunity, it can bring us all together. It can be unifying. So what do we want? Do we want to be driven apart by the greatest opportunity, or do we want to let that opportunity bring us together? Because we're all swimming in the same sea.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think we're striving for in the future is unity on so many levels, and acceptance and equality. And not even acceptance, we shouldn't have to accept, but equality and unity.
And everything that I do in education, whether it's with BSD, we work with neurodiverse populations. We work with young people with learning differences. We work with all female programs. We've set up a program with refugees. But it's all to say, look, technology is this great equalizing opportunity for everyone. And with RefuGeek, for me, it's just incredible to see just for what I see as us doing such a small thing can have such a big impact on someone's life and someone's future. And it can draw communities together. It can draw refugees together with people in Hong Kong.
Like happened with us, the students at this school were drawn together with the refugees.
Exactly.
And it changes their perception, or it enhances their perception in a positive way about refugees and what an impact they can have in the community.
Exactly.
It must be incredibly rewarding, the work that you do. How has it changed you, or has it changed you as a person?
I think, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And as an entrepreneur, you get yourself up in the morning because you believe in what you're doing. And I think when we're a bit younger and we start as an entrepreneur, you kind of want everything to happen really fast.
Yeah. I want everything to happen really fast all the time.
You naively get on that bus in the morning and like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm going to make my first million before I'm 25.
Exactly. This kind of thing. And that's not the way the world works.
Yes.
And anyone who's been successful has walked through fire and has been on a journey. And I think when you work with a population like the refugee population, they took this incredibly brave step to get on a boat, get on an airplane, walk away.
Leave everything behind. Friends, family, homes, possessions, everything.
For this hope that there would be an opportunity for a better life in the future. And I think as an entrepreneur, we're not as brave as refugees. But as an entrepreneur, you strive for something similar. Any entrepreneur who's not trying to build a better future for other people as well as themselves probably isn't actually an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with you.
But so if you're an entrepreneur, that's what you step out to do. But if I look at refugees, it's amazing to see the patience that people have. The patience that people have for simply a better future. For me, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm ever thinking, oh, I've had a bad day. Oh, the world wasn't fair to me today. Maybe when I work with people like refugees, I can reflect and say, do you know what? The world is fair to me every single day.
It puts things in perspective, doesn't
Exactly. It just drives you to go forward, and it drives you to work even harder and to create something even better.
And I think from that, it's really interesting to think about the privilege that we have. We're very, very privileged, both of us, and we can use our privilege to make a difference. And there are many people out there who are privileged, and it's a matter of picking your lane. Where do you want to help? Do you want to make a difference with refugees? Do you want to make a difference with the homeless people? Would you like to help open people's minds and hearts to LGBTQ issues? There are plenty of causes out there. And I think that it's a really good thing if you've got that privilege and that ability to help or get on board, then do it, and do it in a meaningful way.
Exactly. Do it in a way that you are genuinely passionate about, because if you don't do something you're genuinely passionate about, you're not going to stay the course. Because anything you set out to change is going to be hard because people don't like to change.
Yeah, that's true.
Once you stick your neck out there, then it's going to be a long, hard road. And so you've got to be passionate about the issue. And it doesn't matter what you're passionate about. It's only got to matter that you are passionate about it and you want to make that difference. And then the second thing is you do have time. We all have time.
Yes, because it's a typical excuse, isn't it? I'm too busy.
I'm too busy. I don't have time. The thing is, we've got to be honest with each other. It's not I don't have time. It's I'm sorry, but I'm not willing to make it a priority right now because I've chosen to do this plethora of other things in my life right now. That's also okay. But if you want to make a difference into something that you see that you don't like, you have the time. It's just up to you to stick your neck out and make it a priority.
Brilliant. Looking back on your life, Chris, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I think that it's more important to look forward in life than look back. And there's probably innumerable things. When I look back, I could have done different. I could have learned differently. And rather than say, yeah, I would pick particular things in my life, because it's always, if I didn't make a decision at a particular time, where would life have taken me?
And you are where you are because of the path that you've taken.
Exactly,
we all are.
Exactly. And
there's
that's
no point
not
having regret.
Change. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not going to change.
But we can learn lessons from our life, can't we, to look forward.
Exactly. I've learned many lessons in my life. I've learned about making sure that we're on the same page with people that we make partnerships with. I've learned about being patient. I've learned about planning. Value small things. Don't try and make everything huge straight away. But I think one thing that I have learned through life is that everyone peaks at a different time. And the journey of your life, it's a set of lessons that you learn along the way. And we all get different lessons at different times. We have no real control over that. That's just the way it is. Maybe it's serendipity. Maybe it's something else. But in the end of the day, we all have our own journey and we all learn lessons along the way. And that allows us to be the best we can be at the right time for us and at the time that is on our journey. And I don't think we force that. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're a person who's just, you know what? I was the best I could be when I was 45. Someone else, maybe they were the best they could be when they were 25. It doesn't matter. It's no less valuable. And I think that's just something we reflect. And I think for me, as an entrepreneur, you measure yourself against other entrepreneurs. And it's very all-consuming when you're running your own thing and you're driving your own dream. And what I find with that is you see other people and you've got to be able to derive happiness and derive motivation from the success of others.
Oh, that's interesting. Instead of being competitive and jealous.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Be empathetic
yes.
and be pleased for people.
Yes.
Now, I started as an entrepreneur when I was 17 years old. I had my own company when I was 22 years old. Those days, I'm 35 now.
Yeah.
I see these guys, they're 25. I'm like, wow. But why should I not be happy for those guys? Why should that not inspire me and motivate me? You've got to use that as fuel. And I think if you understand that your lessons come to you in your time and you work hard, revel in other people's success, then in the long term, you'll get where you want to be.
Brilliant. And I think on top of that, it's just important to step back and take time and reflect on what's going on because that's when the lessons are learned.
Yes, exactly. And we always have to give ourselves time to think. And I think actually I'm the age where I hit the global financial crisis in 2008 and I was 25 and I'd had really great run in business up to that point for a young guy. And then suddenly
it went bust.
Well, it's, you're 25 years old and you've gone from being kind of the reasonably priced, interesting new option to being risky and no thanks, buddy. See you in a couple of years' time.
How did you cope with that?
Well, you kind of say, well, look, I've had a good run and I've done a lot of things right. You batten down the hatches. You learn a thing about saving some money for a couple of years. You learn about economizing for a couple of years.
Which is a good lesson to learn at 25.
Exactly. You learn about digging in and saying, what do I want out of life? Is this something I want? Am I going to continue with this journey, which I decided was for me? Or am I going to do something different? Which is also okay. But you've got to make that decision. But for me, for the first time, 204, 205, 206, 207, the world, it was moving forward. It wasn't looking back. There was a lot of excess at that time. And then suddenly it all just hit a brick wall, didn't it? It was this kind of, there's no better time to get punched in the face as a young guy than when you're about 25 and you're like, okay, let's sit on the mat for a few seconds, take the 8 count and reflect on, okay, let's be proud of what we've done. What lessons have we learned? And how are we going to apply that to come back stronger and better tomorrow? And I think that crisis coming when it did, for me, temporarily, that's a privilege. It's a privilege to learn those lessons.
Because it helps you to cope with setbacks, doesn't it? Because we always have setbacks in our life.
Exactly. And setbacks are fine.
Yeah, they are. They're character building.
They're character building.
And they can take you on a different journey.
Exactly. And you take the setback and you move on and you go on stronger.
Awesome. Chris, if people want to get in touch with you and donate laptops or come in and commit to a program of upskilling RefuGeeks with technology and IT, how can they do that?
I'm really easy to reach. So you can reach me at cmgeary@gmail.com. That's C for Christopher, M for Mark, GEARY @gmail.com. Or just call myself, 91808650.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much for meeting me today, Chris. It's been a really fascinating chat and I really love learning all about RefuGeek. And I hope that from this podcast, you get some inquiries and support with your program because it really is so worthwhile and wonderful.
Thank you very much, Jules, and thanks for having me on Hong Kong Confidential.
You're very welcome. It's been awesome. Ciao for now.
Bye.
Hong Kong Confidential is brought to you by Teresa's Turkish Towels. Teresa imports the finest 100% Turkish cotton towels that dry very quickly, making them perfect for Hong Kong's humid climate. Say goodbye to the traditional smelly and stinky towels and try the colourful and fresh selections available online or in Teresa's Wan Chai store. Use the promo code CONFIDENTIAL online or mention this podcast when you visit in person to receive $100 off your entire order when you order 2 or more towels. With 100% satisfaction guaranteed or your money back, the only thing you've got to lose are the musty smells that permeate traditional terry towels. Visit www.hkturkish.com in order to get the address and directions to Teresa's semi-hidden location. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.